Please start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, children. Welcome to Telangana Open School Society Digital Lesson for Class 10, Unit 5, Theme Humanity, and topic is Reading A Caring for Others, under which today you will be learning types of sentences, and in the second segment, we will be doing the poem Sympathy. Today's presenter is N. Kalyani Reddy, PGT English from Telangana State Model School, Chegunta. And the coordinator is Ramesh Rao sir. Well, dear students, today's learning outcomes, that is, after this session, you will be able to understand and use types of sentences, that is, simple, complex, and compound sentences. You will be able to use punctuation marks, read and comprehend the poem Sympathy, and answer the questions as well. Well, let us start a segment, and the first segment is types of sentences. So, types of sentences. Sentences are classified under two types. That is, they are classified by their purpose, and they are also classified based on the clause or structure. Well, before we go further into it, let us just revise what a sentence is. A sentence is a set of words that is complete in itself, typically containing a subject and a predicate, conveying a statement, a question, an excellent command, exclamation, and command as well. Okay, let me put it in very simple words, my dear students. It means that it is a set of words that convey a particular meaning, and it is complete all by itself, and a sentence should have subject and predicate. Now, what is predicate? Like, predicate is verb and object together, right? Okay, and subject is about what or who you are talking about in that particular sentence. I think it is clear to you. Well, before we go further, let us take some examples of sentences. Let's read these sentences, dear students. Sentence number 1, I am a convict. This is a statement. Sentence number 2, get out. This is a command. Now, sentence number 3, wonderful. This is something which is an emotion expressed. Now, sentence number 4, why didn't you take them along with you? Now, it is a question. Look at the endings of each sentence, my dear students. You can see that the first sentence is ending with a full stop, and the second sentence is also ending with a full stop, the third one with an exclamation, and the fourth one with a question mark. Well, let us dig deeper into types of sentences. Okay, now these sentences are classified based on the purpose, right? Now they are declarative sentences, imperative sentences, interrogative sentences, and exclamatory sentences. Well, a declarative sentence, it is usually referred to when we talk about facts and ideas. Such kind of sentences are referred to as declarative sentences. Now, what are imperative sentences? Imperative sentences are commands or instructions. Now, moving on, the third type of sentences are interrogative sentences. You know what an interrogation is? Questioning. Therefore, all questions come under interrogative sentences. Now, the last type of sentence, depending on the purpose, is exclamatory sentence, wherein sentences that express strong feelings are categorized under this. Let us further know more about these types of sentences. Declarative sentence gives information. We use them to talk about facts and ideas. In other words, to declare, state, assert, or say something. Say, for example, I am a convict. It is a state, right? I am a teacher. You are a student. Now, dear students, all these are examples of declarative sentences. Moving on, a sentence which asks a question is called an interrogative sentence. Now these sentence ends with a question mark. Okay, all these sentences end with a question mark. Let's take an example here. Why didn't you take them along with the plates? Okay, now here the speaker is asking a question. You can see a question mark there, isn't it? So in order to know some information, we usually ask questions. What is your name? Where are you from? All these also come under interrogative sentences because they are all questions. Well, let's move on. An imperative sentence is used in expressing a command. It basically gives instructions, requests, or demands. Although they can also can be used to denote wishes and make invitations. Generally, the sentence begins with the verb and ends with full stop. Okay, so remember, imperative sentences are instructions, requests, demands, and at times wishes and invitations also, right? Let's take an example here, children. Get out, where I'm annoyed with somebody and I'm asking them to leave right now, which could be an instruction or it could also be a command, right? Other kind examples could be close the door, open, please get me some water. All these come under imperative sentences. Now the last type of sentences under this category are exclamatory sentences. A sentence which expresses strong feelings is called an exclamatory sentence. Now these sentences end with an exclamatory mark. Take a look at the example given here. Thank you. That's wonderful. Wow. Oh, I got hurt. All these are examples of exclamatory sentences. Well, let us look at a conversation between the convict and the bishop. Do you remember the play, The Bishop's Candlesticks, which we have done very recently, right? So students, this is a dialogue between the convict and the bishop. Let me read it for you. Convict. Do you understand? I am a convict. You call me friend and don't say, get out, dog, as everybody else does. You must be a great soul. Thank you. The bishop. You are suffering. You're hungry and thirsty. Be welcome. You mustn't thank me. So, dear students, look at the dialogue here. Now, if you take a look at the first dialogue, that is the conversation in which the convict is talking to the bishop, you can see every sentence is ending with a mark. Now, what are they? Look at the first sentence. It is ending with a question mark. The second sentence is ending with a full stop. Now, if you move further, you can see quotation marks and then apostrophe, then a comma, and then in the end again an exclamatory mark. Okay, children, do you know what they indicate? They indicate the end of that particular sentence. Do you know what they are called? Yes, they are called as punctuation marks. Well, so punctuation means putting in points and stops in a sentence, right? Now, there are a few punctuation marks in your unit. Now, what are they? Full stop, comma, question mark, quotation marks, and exclamation marks. Okay. Now, let us see what kind of punctuation marks are used for these sentences. Say, for example, a declarative sentence. Now, a declarative sentence, it talks about statements. It tells us something, all right? Now, let's take a look at the example here. John likes Mary, right? Now, what is the question mark usually used at the end of a declarative sentence? It is a full stop, right? Now, next is an interrogative sentence. An interrogative sentence is a question. It asks us something. Take a look at the example. Does Mary like John? And what punctuation mark does it take at the end? It's a question mark. Now coming to imperative sentences. Imperative sentences are commands. It tells us to do something. And look at the example here. Stop, close the door. So you can see that these sentences either take an exclamatory mark or a full stop. Now coming to exclamatory sentences, exclamation, that is, it expresses surprise. What a funny story it was. And the punctuation mark that it takes is an exclamation. All right, let's know more about the punctuation marks. A full stop is placed at the end of a sentence and in abbreviations. Take a look at the example here. I am a convict. A full stop is used here because the sentence ends here, right? Now, a question mark. A question mark is used at the end of a direct question. Look at the example. Do you understand? It's a direct question and therefore we used a question mark. Now quotations are used to enclose words in direct speech. Get out, dog. Well, let's move on. The next punctuation mark is a comma. A comma is used to separate phrases or clauses. Say, for example, if you don't speak, I shall go away. You can see it's a phrase which is separated by a comma. And here you can see in the example, it's a clause that is being separated by a comma. Next is an exclamation mark, which occurs at the end of a sentence expressing surprise, joy, anger, shock, etc. So the same example is given here, children, from the dialogue. Take a look at it. Get out, dog. Now, an apostrophe is used in short forms to indicate that letters or figures have been omitted. Take a look at the example. Don't. You can see apostrophe is used as a short form for do not. Well, now let's move on further, children. Now, based on the clause structure, the sentences in English can be divided into three kinds, namely simple sentence, compound sentence, and complex sentence. Well, what's a simple sentence? A simple sentence has a subject and a verb, right? It is a simple structure of a sentence. If you see, take a look at the examples given here. I am a convict. Now, what is the subject in this? Here, the subject is I and the verb is am. Now, in the second example, which is the lamp gives a poor light, you can see the subject is the lamp and the verb is gives. Now let's move on to the last example in this, that is, we are having chicken for dinner tonight. Now, what is the subject here? The subject is we, whereas the verb is are having. Now note here, are is called as a helping verb or rather an auxiliary verb, and having is the main verb. So, in a nutshell, let me put it this way, a simple sentence consists of one subject and one verb. Now, it expresses a complete thought. Now, there is another name for simple sentence, and that is independent clause. It is an independent clause. Now there is nothing fancy in this, my dear students. This means more or less the same thing as a simple sentence, but just remember that it's another name for simple sentence. All right. Now let's move on to the next type of sentence, that is compound sentence. Now what's a compound sentence? So before we actually see the definition of a compound sentence, let us take an example here. Now here is an example which says, I am a teacher, my wife is a lawyer. Look at this sentence, my dear students. Both of them are independent clauses. That is, we have two simple sentences here. But when I say, I am a teacher, my wife is a lawyer, it sounds very disconnected. Okay, so there is no connection when I say that, right? So it sounds very odd and disconnected. Therefore, I would rather say, I am a teacher and my wife is a lawyer. So this makes more sense and it sounds wonderful, right? Okay, so let me put it this way. A compound sentence has independent clauses, right? That is, two or more simple sentences that are joined using a connecting word, right? A compound sentence is just a sentence that has two and sometimes more independent clauses. Now, independent clauses are nothing but simple sentences. Look at the example here. She tried to lift the suitcase. The suitcase was too heavy. So, two different sentences which are independent clauses and they make sense all by themselves, isn't it? So, these two sentences can be connected using but. That is, she tried to lift the suitcase, but it was too heavy. Now, take a look at the next example. He did not have enough cash. He paid by card. Okay, so we can join these sentences by using a connecting word, that is so. He didn't have enough cash, so he paid by card. So this is how we can join two independent clauses and we can make compound sentences. All right. We were talking about connecting words like but and so, isn't it? So these words are called coordinating conjunctions. So what are they called? They are called coordinating conjunctions. Okay. Now there is another important point that you have to observe or make a note when you're writing sentences uh, here. And what is it? A comma is used before the conjunction. Okay. And coordinating conjunctions are used to join these clauses, right? A few conjunctions, there is a fancy thing to remember, children, that is fanboys. So fanboys is just a short form for the common coordinating conjunctions that we usually use when we write sentences. What are they? F for, A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S for snow. So that is fanboys. All right. Now here is a task for you children. I hope you are clear with simple sentences and compound sentences, right? So now combine each set of simple sentences into compound sentences here. Here are your sentences. She dropped her phone. The phone broke. I'm not very hungry. I will just have an orange juice. You should study hard. You will fail in the exam. We would like to buy a car. We can't afford one right now. I told my roommate to turn down the TV. He didn't. I got up and left. Now, here are your sentences, children. Try to join them or combine them using the connecting word given in the brackets. All right. Let's take a look at the answers. She dropped her phone. As I told you, you need to put a comma here and the phone broke. I'm not hungry, so I'll just have an orange juice. You should study hard or you will fail in the exam. We'd like to buy a car, but we can't afford one right now. Now, the third sentence is a little, the last sentence, I'm sorry, the last sentence is a little tricky if you say, because it has three independent clauses. Okay, the first one is I told my roommate to turn down the TV. Second one, he did not. I got up and left. So, three independent clauses or simple sentences. So, how are we going to write it? I told my roommate to turn down the TV, comma, but he didn't. So, I got up and left. All right. Now, let's move on to complex sentences. So here is the clause first. When I got home from work yesterday. So children, so this is incomplete. It doesn't make sense all by itself. Though there is a verb and though there is a subject, but still it is not. It doesn't make complete sense because when I say when I got home from work yesterday, you might ask me, oh, so okay, what happened? what next, isn't it? So unless I write the remaining part of the sentence, or unless I add an independent clause, the sentence doesn't make any sense. Therefore, this particular first part is called as a dependent clause. So that is what a clause which doesn't make a complete meaning all by itself is called as a dependent clause. All right. Look at the examples here. When I got home from work yesterday, as I told you, it is incomplete. It doesn't make any sense unless next independent clause. I watched TV for an hour. Now it is complete. I love to travel because I get to meet a lot of interesting people. Even though the exam was quite difficult, all the students passed. Let me know if you need any help. You can't go out and play until you have finished your homework. So if you take a look at all these examples, you can see that a complex sentence is made of a dependent clause and an independent clause. Okay. Now, subordinating conjunctions. Now, a dependent clause is also called as a subordinate clause. Just like a simple sentence that has another name that is independent clause, a dependent clause is also called as a subordinate clause. Okay. Now, subordinate conjunctions are the words or the connecting words which we use in order to join these sentences, or an independent clause with a dependent clause. They join a clause to another on which depends its full meaning, right? So, examples of few subordinating conjunctions are when, because, even though, if, until. Sometimes relative pronouns are also used. Okay, now here is a task for you, students. Identify simple, complex, and compound sentences. Well, if you see, there are no simple, like compound sentence is also made of simple sentences. So, let us see the complex and compound sentences. He was absent because he was ill. Now, when you take a look at it, there are two sentences, that is independent clauses here. He was absent, he was ill. Now, what is the connecting word that we have used? Coordinating conjunction, because. He was absent because he was ill. Now, let's take a look at the second example. A man who is blind needs help. Now, this is again a complex sentence. Owing to his health, he was not able to work. Complex again. He was not only a scholar but also a good poet. If you see, two independent clauses joined by not only but also. Therefore, it is a compound sentence. All right, my dear students, let us move ahead into B reading part, that is the poem Sympathy. Well, before we read the poem, I just wanted you to take a look at the picture on the screen. Do you know who this lady is? Yes, she is called the saint of the gutters. She is called as Mother Teresa. Now, here is a wonderful quote by Mother Teresa. Let me read it for you, dear students. The poor give us much more than what we give them. They're such strong people living day to day with no food, and that never curse, never complain. And they never curse, never complain. We don't have to give them pity or sympathy. We have so much to learn from them. So, Mother Teresa is talking about poor people here, and she's saying, and she's also talking about pity and sympathy. Well, dear students, do you know what sympathy is? Well, this eight-letter word does magic in the world. So, what is sympathy? Sympathy is understanding. Sympathy is care for someone else's suffering. Sympathy is a helping hand and a compassionate word that you share with the person who's in grief. The lending hand, or the help that you give to a person who is suffering, a person who is injured, a person who is in pain. Well, Today we are going to read a very wonderful poem titled Sympathy. Right? Now let me tell you about the poet. Charles McKay was a Scottish poet, journalist, author, and novelist, mainly remembered for his book Extraordinary Popular Delusions and The Madness of Crowds. Well, let me explain you the setting of the poem Sympathy. Now, his poem, that is the poem of Charles McKay, is set at a difficult time in the poet's life. Okay, so he was going through a lot of suffering. At this time, poet was injured and lying by the side of the road. In the absence of any human company, he was distressed. He was also in grief, both physically and mentally. The poet goes on to describe two different resolutions to this setting. Both of these resolutions are contrast to each other, and his message is conveyed through the device of this very contrast in the scenario. Let me put it in simple words, children. The poet is in a lot of pain, and he was injured, and he was lying beside the road. Maybe he met with an accident. There was nobody around. He was really distressed. That is, he was very sad, upset. Okay, now he was in grief, he was in pain, he was having mental pain and physical pain. Physically, because he got injured, mentally, because there was nobody to help him out. Right? So, what happened? Now, there were two resolutions here. Like, he comes across two types of people here, and through which he learns a valuable lesson in his life. And that is what. And now, these two people that he met in this particular incident, both of them were totally contrast. Right? One was a very rich person, and the other one was a very poor person. Right? So, what is the contrast, and what happened? And how did the poet uh, react to that? And what is the most valuable lesson that he has learned from this particular incident? Let's read the poem. Well, before we read the poem, let's take a look at the vocabulary. You might come across these words in the poem. So let me explain you the meanings of these words. Grief. Grief is intense sorrow. That is, when you're really in a great sorrow, it is called grief. If somebody dies in your family, you will be in great grief, right? Now, cold eyed, that is unfriendly, not showing emotion. When you are very apathetic, when you are indifferent to somebody's feelings, emotions, and pain, then that means you are giving a cold eye. Now, pass away. Children, pass away has many meanings, but here in this context, it means ended. Now, charity. Now, what's charity? Charity is the voluntary giving of help. That is, even you yourself offer help to somebody, and if that help is in the form of money, then it is called as charity. Well, let me read this wonderful poem for you, children. The title of the poem is Sympathy, and it's written by Charles McKay. I'm going to read the poem. Please listen to it. I lay in sorrow, deep depressed. My grief a proud man heard. His looks were cold. He gave me gold, but not a kindly word. My sorrow passed. I paid him back the gold he gave me, then stood erect and spoke my thanks and blesses his charity. I lay in want, in grief and pain. A poor man passed my way. He bound my head. He gave me bread. He watched me night and day. How shall I pay him back again for all he did to me? Oh, gold is great, but greater far is heavenly sympathy. All right? Did you get any idea about this? Well, now you're going to get some idea. Take a look at the picture here. Now you can see three people here. What are they doing? There is a man who's injured. He was sitting under the tree. Now there is another man who's offering food to him. Now there is a man who's standing by the car. Now he seems to be very rich, but very unconcerned, right? Now this is what is the poem about. Let me read it for you once again before we move further. I lay in sorrow, deep depressed. My grief a proud man heard. His looks were cold. He gave me gold, but not a kindly word. My sorrow passed. I paid him back the gold he gave me, then stood erect and spoke my thanks, and blesses his charity. I lay in want, in grief and pain. A poor man passed my way. He bound my head, he gave me bread, he watched me night and day. How shall I pay him back again for all he did to me? Oh, gold is great, but greater far is heavenly sympathy. Right? Now take a look at the poem once again, children. Do you find any rhyming words here? Well, I find a lot of rhyming words. Take a look at them. Yes. Heard, word, me, charity, way, day. Okay, if you see the last word in the second line and the last word in the fourth line are rhyming. And again, me with charity, way with day, and me with sympathy. Well, okay, now let's look at this once again. This poem has 16 lines, children. Now the first 4 lines. I lay in sorrow, deep depressed. My grief a proud man heard. His looks were cold. He gave me gold, but not a kindly word. Now in these lines, the poet describes an incident where he was lying in the ground. Perhaps he was injured. In any case, it is clear that he was experiencing some kind of suffering. As a result, he was sorrowful and depressed. That is, he is very disappointed and sad. Now, he needed some help. That's what, when you are depressed and disappointed, you need somebody to help you, right? As he was crying out in his grief with a lot of pain, a proud man, a very rich and proud man, he heard this man crying bitterly. Now, he heard his voice and he stopped. And then, to help him, this rich man, he came to him to help him. The poet could figure out that he prided himself on his wealth, because the only way in which that man helped him was to provide him with money to get himself treated. So what happened? Now this man was very proud. He has a pride of his wealth. He feels very great that he has a lot of money. So what happened? Now he went to this poet, and then he did not take him, he did not talk to him. He did not ask what happened. Do you need some help? Nothing like that. He just gave some money and said, go get yourself treated. But was the poet really in a condition that he would himself go and get some treatment? No. Apart from that, there was no emotion as such on the man's face. He did not speak to the poet at all and did not try to console him either. So he thought that mere giving money is a great favor that he is doing to the poet. So he did not speak to him because he was very proud that he was rich and he's got a lot of money, right? So he just gave the money, threw the money at him, and then he did not console him. He did not utter even a single word of console. That is, he did not say, oh, what happened? Are you really feeling bad? Nothing like that. He just threw the money and he walked away. My sorrow passed. I paid him back the gold he gave me, then stood erect and spoke my thanks and blessed his charity. So after some days, what happened? He had recovered from the previously described incident. That is, he became all right. He got cured of all his injuries. And then what did he do after that? He went to the rich man and he gave him the money that he gave to the poet when he was injured. And then he stood straight and he said, "May God bless you for giving me money to get me treatment." Right? This is what he did. So let's look at the meaning once again. In these lines, the poet described what happened to him after he had recovered from the previously described incident. He says that his bad time had come to an end and he was able to repay the man who had helped him in the form of returning the money. He had learnt he had lent the poet after, I'm sorry, children, he lent, that is, he gave some money, isn't it? After repaying him, the poet stood upright. He was very proud because now he is not taking any favor, right? And thanked him. In addition to this, the poet offered the man what he had not offered the poet, that is, a kind word. He spoke to him very kindly and said that God will certainly reward him for his charity. Now let's move on. I lay in want and grief and pain. A poor man passed my way. He bound my head. He gave me bread. He watched me day and night. Now, the second situation where, a poor man saw this poet who was injured and lying beside the road. Now, this poor man did not just give him money. He did not give him any money because he did not have money. But what did he do? He was so compassionate, loving, and caring that he just put a band-aid around his head. And then he nursed him. He took care of him. Day and night, he took good care of the poet, and he did it out of love and affection. So, in these lines, the poet describes an incident that is very similar to the one he had described at the beginning of the poem. He says that he had been lying on the ground, injured as before. He was as sad as he had been back then. He was also in a lot of pain. He desperately wanted some help. A poor man was walking by that place, and he stopped to help the poet. Instead of giving the poet money, as the proud man had, he bandaged the poet's injured head and gave him some food and drink to restore his health. He stayed by the poet's bedside in the daytime as well as the night time till he had recovered fully. So that was the difference between the rich man and the poor man. The rich man had a lot of money, but he was poor at heart. The poor man did not have money, but he was very rich at his heart. Well, now the last lines of the poem. How shall I pay him back again for all he did to me? Oh, gold is great, but greater far is heavenly sympathy. So now the poet was so thankful to this poor man. He's saying that I don't think I will ever be able to repay him for the love, affection, and sympathy that he had shown, because gold is precious, but what is more precious is the love and affection and the love and care that you show to a needy person. And that is what the poor man has done. So probably I may not repay him back of what he has done. In these lines, the poet wonders how he will pay back the poor man who had taken such good care of him. He owes the man something much more important than or precious than a pile of notes or coins. Nothing, no material thing could really pay what the poor man has done. What he owes the man isn't even anything that has a physical importance or physical manifestation. Therefore, it will be rather difficult to repay the man. This is when the poet comes to a great realization. He understands that the value of sympathy is much more than that of money. Money can certainly help you out in your time of need, but sympathy from a fellow being can lift your spirits and give to fight against your bad circumstances. So, what you need to give is not just money, but a compassionate treatment. wherein you lend in your shoulder when your friend is in grief, and assisting and nursing the people who are really distressed and in pain. All right. I hope, dear students, you have understood the poem. So here's a small task for you. Choose the correct meanings and from the options given here. The poet was in deep sorrow. A proud man came and helped. Now, how did the proud man help him? Option A, offering him kind words. Option B, ignoring him. C, giving him gold. D, giving him pleasant company. So, the option is here is C, that is giving him gold. Now, second question, when the poet lay in wanton grief, the one who helped him was. Now, this is a second situation that we are talking. Okay, so he was in grief and he wanted somebody to help him, isn't it? So, whom did he? Who was the one who helped him? It is A is rich man, B a poor man, C a proud man, D a holy man. All right, it is a poor man. The poor man gave the poet a cold look, B. Sympathy, C. Gold, D. Not a kind word. Now, this is what makes the poor man very rich at its heart. What is it? It's a sympathy. Well, question number 4. When the poet's sorrow passed, the what did he give the proud man? What is it? He gave him back the gold, ignored him, did not give back the gold, helped him. So, what did he do? He gave him back the gold. Now, the last option, last MCQ, the poet refers to sympathy as heavenly because sympathy is a feeling found in proud people, is found only in rich people, is an ordinary human feeling, is a blessing from God. Sympathy is a blessing from God. Not all people have that loving heart. Now, here is another task for you, dear students. Find in the poem lines that match the meaning of the following sentences. I was sad and happy. I was in need and was sad and hurt. He fed me and took care of me. Gold is valuable, but sympathy and love are far more valuable. Students, I'll give you 5 minutes time. Just go through the poem and try to match these with the meanings. You may pause the video also. Well, let's discuss the answers. I was sad and unhappy, which means I lay in sorrow, deeply distressed. I'm sorry, it is distressed. Number 2, I was in need and was sad and hurt. I lay in want and grief. Number 3, he fed me and took care of me. He bound my head. He gave me bread and watched me night and day. Number 4, gold is valuable, but sympathy and love are far more valuable. Answer is, oh, gold is great, but greater far is heavenly sympathy. All right. So, dear students, now let us revise the question and answers. The first question is, how did the proud person help the poet when the poet was unhappy? When the poet was unhappy, the proud person helped him with money. He gave him gold. What did the poor man do when he found him lying in pain and sadness? Now, when he found the poet lying in pain and sadness. Dear students, if you want the answers, you can take the screenshots of these. When the poor man found the poet lying in pain and sadness, the poor man did not leave his side. He bounded his head and gave him food to eat. The poor man took care of him day and night. Now, all these sentences are in the poem itself, children. Now, the third question, why is the poor man's help greater than gold? The poor man's way of help is full of heavenly sympathy. The rich man's help was just an expression to show the uh, power of wealth. His help had no sympathy. So the poor man's help is greater than gold. Well, oh, gold is great, but greater far is heavenly sympathy. Why does the poet think so? Gold or money is exchangeable and can be measured, whereas the sympathy that a man shows with another is priceless. Okay, sympathy complements humanity. That is why sympathy is godly goodness, and therefore the poet also thinks so. So, sympathy is greater than anything. It is not, it is not a materialistic thing. It should come from within the heart. That is why it is heavenly. That is something, a godly quality that very few people possess. All right. So, dear students, I hope you have understood very well the different types of sentences and the two different types of sentences based on the criteria. And I hope you also understood the poem very well. Now, let me give you some instructions before I close the session. Please go through the textbook, read the poem. There are some exercises given at the end of the grammar segment and also at the end of the poem. Try to answer them. In case you want to note down the answers, you can revisit the video, you can replay, take screenshots, and you can write them down. That's all. We have come to the end of this segment, my dear students. Uh, take care of yourself.